Welcome to Replayable, where we go into depth on our favorite tabletop games that keep us coming back again and again. I'm the Start Player Todd, and today I'm joined by David and Paul. For our 31st episode, we'll be walking amongst the trees in Forest Shuffle. It was designed by Kosh and released by Lookout Games in 2023 with artwork by Tony Lobe and Judith Paia. Are you two ready for a serotinal saunter?
I pitched my tent, I got out my binoculars. I'm up for some nature watching right now.
There you go.
I'm ready to pet the deer.
Forest Shuffle is a card game where players compete to gather the most valuable trees, then attract species to them. The goal is to create the best ecosystem for flora and fauna. The inclusion of multi-use cards means that when you play a card, you pay for its cost using more cards from your hand. Discarded cards go into a clearing and are eligible to be retrieved by other players. When the clearing reaches 10 or more cards, they are all removed. At the start of the game, 3 winter cards are placed in the bottom third of the draw pile. The game ends when the third winter card has been drawn. Let's see here. Which one of you has taken a walk in the forest the most recently?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's probably not me. I really miss the woods, and I've been too urban for too long.
Yeah, I mean, I go to a urban forest, a nature trail every Sunday.
Whoa.
But it's surrounded by freeways and buildings.
And plenty of wildlife, probably, sneaking in the corners.
The small ones, yeah.
You get to start us off here. 2023, if you have looked at the games that were released, there are quite a few that have received a lot of critical acclaim. I mean, this seems like it was a banner year, and Forest Shuffle was one amongst many. What are some of your favorites that were released last year, and how do you think Forest Shuffle stacks up?
Well, for me, my favorite is Forest Shuffle. It is my most played game from 2023. Yeah, I have to also shout out to Dune Imperium Uprising, Sky Team, and Great Western Trail New Zealand. Those are also favorites of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Great Western Trail New Zealand, more is to be seen. So I think that hasn't hit the table for the last time. I think we'll be seeing that quite a bit more.
I'd love to play again, yeah.
Yeah. We'll
Right.
maybe start it a little earlier next time.
Yeah, that was a painful decision to play it through to the end last night.
Yeah, maybe we should put some full disclosure as we're playing this, where last night we played our game night, Great Western Trail New Zealand, and we went maybe 1 o'clock. Were
Right.
you guys on the road home by 1?
Yes.
A little after, yeah.
Yeah, and our days of staying up all night are kind of behind us. So this might be a little loopy. We'll see how this one goes tonight.
No, that's going to be pure quality content right there.
Yeah. Well, look, of the games released in 2023, at least you put together a list for us, which I think is just looking at it just a banner year almost for games. It's not letting up. We're getting year after year of fantastic games. Of these games, though, I think Forest Shuffle is probably the most OG game that I can see. So
Right.
The trend of modern games continues, but it's really happy to see that some of these OG elements are kind of staying alive and coming back at us at new, fresh ways.
Well, Dave, how does it stack up against, say, Earthborn Rangers?
Or Lorcana.
It's well, Lorcana is also, I wouldn't say an OG kind of game, but it's definitely an old kind of game because it's straight out of the 90s collectible card game fad.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, stack up, Earthborn Rangers it's not a new genre, and we'll talk about it more if we ever get to it on this podcast, but it's expanding on a relatively new genre. So it's hard to even compare because it's moving in such a different direction with narrative and things like that. I'd be hard pressed to compare them because it's very much apples and oranges, or butterflies and mushrooms, I think.
Nice way to keep it on topic. Beyond that, the White Castle, and I would say we have Ticket to Ride Legacy that also came out. I mean, a lot of great games, and Forest Shuffle manages to stand out amongst such august company. A lot of it, I think, has to do with that attractiveness of multi-use cards and cards only. Right? There's something elegant and nostalgic about that format for me.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it. It's just a bit of druid magic or something.
Well, I think in some ways Todd and I are saying the same thing. Where I'm calling it OG, you're calling it elegance, which is, I think, one of the hallmarks of OG. when we look at these list of other games, I love Dune Imperium, and our little plays of Uprising look promising, but I wouldn't call that an elegant game. It's fun for different reasons.
Right.
But Forest Shuffle has components straight out of games we were playing 20 years ago, yet it doesn't feel like a copycat or a rehash, really. They're almost kind of hidden in the game. Some specific elements that I think I didn't see my first few plays. And once one of you kind of illuminated it for me, I thought, oh, I can look at this game in a whole new way. And I don't want to reveal that yet, but we'll get to that, as we talk about it more.
Right. All right. How about continuing the current trend of ecology-themed games? Because we've seen quite a few of those recently, too.
As we move away from colonial themes and spice trading themes and some of these themes that were starting to get a little tired in their own right, but also we were starting to see kind of how they're problematic.
Right.
And so now we're getting into anthropomorphized animals and a little more space themes and things like that. And so the rise of the nature themed game makes sense because nobody's offended by a beautiful forest.
Yeah, I gave a shout out to Forest Shuffle back when we did our Arc Nova podcast. And
right.
I think Forest Shuffle takes it a step further in that it doesn't have any plastic or components or packaging. And from personal experience, I've played it over a dozen times by hand, and it's still just as good as the day I opened it.
Yeah, we commented on that last night. I said, we were playing Paul's copy, and I said, you're eventually going to have to get these things sleeved because they're going to start to show wear. And he goes, this is like the 12th or 15th play. They're fine. They still feel brand new. And I thought, yeah, actually, that's true. They're holding up very well.
They are. Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about some of the concepts of the game. Let's talk about the clearing. That's another one of those features of this game that, while I haven't seen it done in this exact method or implementation, it certainly feels familiar, right? As far as I'm going to discard some cards and then you have an opportunity to benefit, perhaps, because the thing I don't want may be the exact card you were looking for. How do you like the mechanism of the clearing and perhaps the timing issue of it?
Yeah, it's as old as Mahjong or Rummy, right? Where part of the game is picking up your opponent's discards. But one of the things that makes the clearing special to me is that if you know your opponent wants a card, you can time your discard such that they can't get to it, since the clearing is wiped whenever it reaches 10.
Right.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is it may feel familiar because it's from the 1800s in a game called Rummy. Yeah,
and that's why we feel familiar. Is we're that old. No.
Today it feels like it. But no, that idea where I can't use this card, but I know you can, so I can't safely discard it, it creates a nice tension in the game. And I really like what Paul was bringing up on that too, that idea of timing that discard to get that wiped off of the board. I had a few interesting decisions on that last night when we played, because what Paul and Greg were both going for. What was the tree you were going for?
Horse chestnuts.
The horse chestnuts. And Greg was closer to me in turn order. So I knew, and I was holding one, and I really wanted to discard it, but I knew Greg's going to get that card and put it into play. And at the same time, Todd and I were competing on the linden tree as far as who's going to have the most. And I had a linden tree I was ready to discard because I felt like I had enough, but I needed to time both of those where I didn't want either of those to get into your two guys' hands. And it made for an interesting tension as I was playing through, trying to accomplish what I want to accomplish, but also put the kibosh on what you're trying to accomplish.
Very true. Yeah, it reminds me of some of the classic OG games that have strong left-right bindings, where you see someone doing something, and if you're sitting immediately preceding them in turn order, you start copying them because you get to scoop up on all the same things and prevent them from getting any.
Right. In fact, I think Greg had a similar experience to that exact thing, where he saw what you were doing and recognized that he should have been picking up those cards ahead of you.
I started the game by playing a chestnut, and then Greg's like, oh, instead of actually discarding these, I'm just going to play them instead.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, you did all right. But since he was sitting to your immediate
we'll
right.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But yeah, since he was sitting to your immediate right, that was going to hinder. I mean, you certainly weren't going to see any of them in the discard or in the clearing unless something popped up from somebody playing a tree, or Greg specifically playing a tree or something like that.
Right.
But how many did you end up getting, even with Greg actively trying to prevent you from getting those chestnuts? How many did you get into play?
The two I started the game with.
Oh, and that was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Dave, I remember when you made that play and you got rid of the horse chestnut, and did you also get rid of the linden tree?
That was later.
That was later. Well, on one of those, you also got rid of the last fire salamander that I was waiting for because I already had two of them. And I remember I told you
it was in the clearing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he put it into the clearing, but then the clearing got to 10 and got wiped.
No, I put it in the clearing, but right, Dave saw that.
Did I?
Well, he said he didn't. That was the thing. And I was like,
I didn't.
I was like, Dave, that was really well timed because, I had two of those, and that's the difference between like 10 and 25 points for the set if you can pick up the third. So it was a 15-point card for me. And Dave wiped the clearing unknowing that I was looking for it. Even worse.
My theme of the night last night was to spoil you at every possible turn, apparently, unknowingly to me.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished. Although, you were playing linden trees, I was playing linden bees.
Yeah. Well, but in some ways, that's an element of the game I've been grumbling about a little bit. I like keeping track of a little bit of, what you're doing and trying to prevent you from doing that. But there's a lot that other people are doing. So I had no idea that I wiped that salamander for you. I mean, if I'd known, I would have done it with glee.
Right.
But I was probably playing into by giving people cards that help them as much as I was inadvertently disrupting them. And it's just, there's a lot going on. And this is in the multiplayer version. We were playing 5 last night, which pretty high player count for this game, I think.
It's max.
So there's so many things going on in other people's forests that it's very difficult to keep track of what everybody's doing.
Yeah, and paying attention to it, also just knowing what's possible. So there's definitely a knowledge component to this game that far exceeds games that I would consider to be like it, right? Like in San Juan, you just need to know that you have basically the 3-6 buildings that you can play, whether it's a city hall, guild hall, or the triumphal arch, and how those are constructed. But there are so many other combos in Forest Shuffle that if there's a player that knows what's out there and what's possible, they definitely have a distinct advantage that I don't think is as easily met because there are options.
I think it's pretty comparable to San Juan as far as the knowledge benefit. There's definitely more cards, but in my opinion, a lot of the combos are not that powerful, but there are a few that are extremely powerful.
Yes, there are.
Well, I think I would disagree a little bit on that because a key difference between San Juan and Forest Shuffle for me is on San Juan, it's more of a race where I'm going to be getting good value out of my cards. And there's almost nothing you can do that's going to prevent me from getting X points from this card that I played.
Yeah, because, you don't have to worry about what you're discarding.
Right. Well, I'm thinking in the sense of, the woodpecker, which scores based on if nobody has more trees than you.
Oh, the comparative cards, yes.
Right. In San Juan, there aren't any cards that I'm going to play that may be worth nothing at the end, without me knowing. Like I might play a 6 value card that's going to have no value at the end, but that's my own doing. Right. But this idea of playing some cards, maybe even doing well with it, and somebody sneaking up on you with, some other way to outpace you in that element, and then you get nothing for it, that I think is a little deflating.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree.
And like the linden trees, it says right up front, it's worth 1 point or 3 points if nobody else has more than you. So that one, you can see where that trade-off is going to be.
Right. And I argue at the others, you can see it too. And you call it deflating. I call it invigorating.
I think it's invigorating once you know what to expect. But as you're still getting accustomed to the game, I agree, Dave. Like, it's deflating when I'm sitting over here and I'm doing my combos and I think I've got a pretty good score going. And then it turns out that Paul comes up with a combo that scored, 120 points between your wolves and your deer?
Oh yeah, I had 6 deer and 2 wolves, and it was like 114 just from those 8 cards.
Right, and Megan just started laughing because it was like, what are the rest of us even doing in this game?
That's right.
Well, the element where, Todd and I were competing for linden trees, that I thought was a fun, I wouldn't really call it a cat and mouse game, but I was sitting 2 players to your right.
Right.
So I could kind of keep pace with you playing linden trees.
You had a slight advantage, yeah.
Yeah, and I had a few in my hand. So at one point, Todd asked me how many linden trees you had, and my answer was always going to be one more than you, because if you play one, I'll play another one.
Right.
what took me by surprise is just I don't know the deck well enough, is that bees count as trees. And that's the sort of pull the rug out from under you thing that I mean, what was my comment at the time? Is this supposed to make me like the game more? That bees
That's
count
exactly
as trees?
what it was.
It's this element, this kind of gotcha surprise that familiarity is totally going to solve.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a big enough deck where it's going to take a few plays to get that familiarity. Like
It's a good mnemonic, though. Bees count as trees.
Well, I'll never forget, will I?
No, you won't. All right, we talked about the timing and the timing of the clearing as far as being able to get rid of cards. How about the timing of the clearing with respect to ending the game?
The winter cards?
Even at the beginning of the game, you could play a faster game by always top decking instead of drawing from the clearing. And that was something that stood out to me even last night, was like every time I draw 2 cards from the clearing, I am prolonging this game.
Right.
And if those cards really aren't adding value to my tableau and I'm just picking them up so that I can pay with them, then I should just be top decking.
Well, it's the same decision as Lost Cities.
Right.
Do you feel like you're in a position to win if the game is extended, or do you feel like that's your opponent and so you have to hurry it up? It really comes to a head when you play this game 2-player.
Right. And I feel like one of you should always be pushing. It's a little bit like San Juan that way too. Like somebody should be pushing the game clock. Someone's in the lead.
Right. Whoever's winning, basically, or whoever needs the game to be shorter.
Right.
Race for the Galaxy is the same way. One player wants the game to go quicker than another player.
Right. And those positions may switch and do shift many times during the course of the game. So how do you like that inclusion in Forest Shuffle?
I love the clearing. I think that's a big part of what makes the game enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes it totally wonderful. I love variable game lengths, where player-driven game lengths, where a player can put their foot on the gas or put their foot on the brakes or something like that. I really enjoy that being a game, especially introduced to that, a push your luck element where we're on borrowed time, where this game's going to, I don't know if I'm going to get another turn or not. That's a really juicy, interesting decision space at the end of this game when you're in that position.
Well, right. Because like in Lost Cities, I'm sure we've done the thing, right, where you take the bottom 5 cards and you set them, and then you take the next 5 and you set them crosswise. So it's like a visible game timer. You know how many cards are remaining in the deck in Lost Cities. And then the game is going to end when you reach the bottom. But this, you don't know when that third winter card's going to show up. Do you think the game's better or worse for that unknown ending on the timer?
For me, it's absolutely better.
Yeah.
Because if it is known, then people are going to start min-maxing and making calculation after calculation after analysis paralysis to extend the game length. The variable ending keeps it choppy and keeps it quick.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that, where it starts to become calculable as to, can I squeeze out one more point? Can I rob you of one more point? And that's really going to slow it down, like the end of an NBA basketball game. That part of the game, it's similar to me to a game like Alhambra that has that, when's that last card going to show up? How much more can I squeeze out? Because you've got that card hidden somewhere at the lower portion of the deck that's going to, jump at you by surprise.
Yeah. Not last night's game, but the one we played 2 weeks ago, we hit the first 2 winter cards fast. And then the last one was in the last, 5 or 6 cards of the deck. So we had a long run of thinking the game could end at any moment. And
being on pins and needles,
yeah, am I going to be able to draw again? Does it make sense for me to even try? And then the game kept going. It was great, and it was also agonizing at the same time.
Especially because I don't know about you guys, but I was constantly trying to get down to 0 or 1 card. So I didn't feel like I had held any points back, but the game just kept going.
Right?
Yeah, right. You put it all out there. And that happened to me actually last night as well. I put it all out there and I think this game needs to end because I need a turn to draw cards and then a turn to play them again. Like, I don't know if I'm going to get 2 turns.
Right.
So Ticket to Ride does that to you sometimes too. Or right at the end, like, I don't have enough cards to play right now, but if I draw them, I'm not going to get another play of putting trains out there.
Right. Then it becomes a function of keeping track of how many cards everybody else has in their hand, which works better in the city versions of Ticket to Ride because you tend not to hoard cards as much as you do in the full versions of the game. oh, you've got 12 cards in your hand. That doesn't happen much in the like Ticket to Ride, New York or London.
So I do have a question for you guys. So in Ticket to Ride, when I get to the end, if I'm holding a hand of 10 cards or something like that, I feel like I've very inefficiently played to the end of the game here. Do you feel that way, or is that happening to you sometimes in Forest Shuffle where you get to the end and you're holding 6 cards? You think, wow, I really kind of overshot my finish line here.
I mean, it happens to me a lot, but I don't feel that way because I know that the end game was basically random. Could have happened at any time.
Well, when you're getting in that borrowed time of the third winter is going to show up, I mean, you can't plan 3 turns ahead. You can maybe plan a turn and a half ahead. So somewhere between 1 and 2.
So it's really interesting because I've played the game on BGA. I was in a tournament and there was a very heated game where one of the things I actually don't like on BGA is it allows you to turn on live scoring. So BGA will tell you what everybody's score is second by second. And I realized that even though 2 winter cards were revealed, there was no way I was going to retake the lead in 1 or 2 turns. So I instead had to just pray that the game continued until the last 4 or 5 cards in the deck and strategically find some new combos to overtake the lead. And it actually worked out for me. And the winter card was, in fact, the very last card of the deck.
Oh, wow.
In that game.
That's interesting. I like that. So you're almost in tilt mode where you have to go big. And if you get caught, before you're ready, oh, well, you were going to lose anyways. But if it shows up late and you pull this off, then you'll be able to overtake the leader.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So I was holding a raccoon in my hand when the game ended last night. And the plan was when I thought it was getting ready to end, have enough cards in my hand to make it worthwhile. But the raccoon allows you to place all of the cards in your hand, any number of cards in your hand, into your cave. And so it would have wiped my hand. But, if you think the game's going to end soon, then it's not a bad way to get extra points if you're...
Well, more importantly, the raccoon replaces every card you put in your cave with a draw from the deck. So it's going to make that winter happen toot sweet.
Yeah. So like my last turn, as it turned out, I should have played the raccoon because I could have hastened the ending of the game.
Yes.
At least increase the chances of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love the composition of these cards. Trees are an entire card, and then you've got the split cards, right? Either left, right, and then the other side is going to be hidden behind the tree that you attach it to. And same thing with the ones that are split top, bottom. I think it's an ingenious mechanism. And I also noticed that a lot of times there will be a wolf that wants to eat the European hares, or a fox that wants the European hares, and there's a European hare on the other half of the card.
Yep.
Right.
And the same thing with bats, and I think there's a bug that gives you a bonus depending on the number of unique bats you have. But there's a bat on the same card, and I think it's interesting the way that they make it agonizing that the thing you want to collect is the thing you have to cover up.
Yeah, I think you mean the dormouse that's worth 15 points if it's in the same tree as a bat. It's always paired with a bat.
Right.
Right. Well, and that just plays into hand management. So my first game, I think I played every card with a hope and a dream. And that is not the way to play this game, is to, to play a fox and hope I draw some hares later. It's like Lost Cities. If I think of every tree or everything that goes on that tree as a new expedition, I'm going to wait until I build up in my hand. So I see, can I support this expedition? I'm not going to spend all this money on, I'll say the fox and the hares. I'm not going to spend all this money on the fox if I'm not going to get any hares, or vice versa. And that one's interesting too, because you're better off playing the hares first, because then when you play the fox, you get to draw some cards. So even those start to interact with each other as to which one I'm going to get out there first. And you can only hold 10 cards max in your hand, which is a frustrating little thing going on.
Limitation.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I agree. To me, the pairing of left, right, and top, bottom really add even more to the overhead required to play this game well.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least being able to see the combinations that you're going to try to set up. Do you have a good way of organizing your hand that you don't forget? Because, I mean, there have been times where I looked at my hand and I thought, okay, I'm going to play this a certain way. And then it comes my turn and I forgot that was the combination I was going for. And I almost discarded a key card for it to pay for something. And I was like, oh, wait, no. I can't get rid of that card. I need to save that card because, it has whatever on it. It has a hare, or it has a fox, or it has a wolf, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, personally, I put the cards I want to play closest to my face, and the cards I want to discard closest to my hand.
Okay.
It's gin rummy, the sets you're working on, cards that you don't want to discard because your neighbor wants them, or it's the same kind of thing where you have different places in your hand. I actually, last night at one point, I had so many different things to consider. I'm like, cards I want to discard, but can't, cards I can play, cards I might play, cards I definitely will play. And so I started just laying them out in little piles. Just,
You had
just to
you had
get
like
my
4
head
little
straight.
piles in front of you.
Which is how my children play rummy. It's like, those are my hearts, those are my diamonds. And I figured it works for them, and then I would pick them all back up and put them in order. But I just had to take a page out of my kids' playbook.
Got it.
So is there engine building?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this game is all about combos.
Well, no, I don't think combos and engine building are the same thing. Is what I mean by engine building is in the beginning of the game, are you setting up some sort of economy? Or do you just sometimes luck into it?
I don't think you luck into it. So the combos I'm thinking of are not just 2 or 3 card combos. They're like 8 or 9 card combos.
Right.
And once you see 3 of that larger meta combo, I prefer to just dig in and try to get as many of those as I can.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. So you're not differentiating between early game economy cards and mid to late game VP cards.
The only differentiation I have is the mushrooms.
Yeah.
I will never play a mushroom late.
Right. That makes sense.
You don't have enough time to recoup the value of the tempo that you sacrifice to play it.
Exactly.
Going back to the clearing, have you drafted for colors specifically so that you can invoke the binocular ability on a card that you're holding?
When it's take another turn, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the only one that's worth going after, is take another turn?
I think it's the most important one, but if I'm okay with extending the game like we talked about, then I'll try to activate as many binoculars as I can. The problem, though, is that with the 10-card limit, I usually have, 4 or 5 cards I want to play. So I've only got room in my hand for 5 or 6 cards I can discard to put those out.
Well, I may be seeing part of the reason I've been doing so poorly in this game. But I hadn't thought about that idea of drafting, because they're multi-use cards, of drafting cards specifically to be used as payment.
Absolutely.
Usually, I'm trying to only draft cards that I can use, and then cards that don't quite fit get defaulted to payment. But yeah, if there's a couple of maple tree icons sitting out there, and I'm going to be playing the maple tree or whatever it is, and I'm just looking to pick up more cards, I got to pay something for the tree. I might as well, because something, I have hesitation with that, because I'm thinking of, say it's an extra turn, which, like Paul was saying, would be the most strongest. I'm spending a turn in order to get an extra turn later, that I think, is that really giving me any tempo?
It goes with the hand management. It's allowing you to keep the cards you want to play.
Right.
And even more, if the cards you're using to gain that extra turn are ones you want to play later, you can pick them right back up again with that extra turn.
Well, yeah, Todd pulled that off. I'm sure you did too. And I, a couple of times last night, where we put these juicy cards out in the clearing, and I get another turn, I'll just take them right back.
Right. And in one of those, I didn't even need to discard the juicy card. I could have picked up a blind one off the top of the deck and hung on to it. And I was doing that for color in that one. What about point scaling? So as the game draws near its conclusion, you should be either adding to your existing power combos if you have them, or hopefully finding the last card in a butterfly set, something like that. Is there any rule of thumb that when you think it's the last turn, you should be getting at least, 3 to 5 points for a card that you play?
Can you plan that specifically? I feel like when you're getting in that borrowed time, each turn is, what's the max I can do right now? Because this could be my last.
Yeah, to me, it really matters whether or not I know my opponent's score. When we're playing face-to-face, I'm not going to care what your score is. I'm just trying to play what's best for me.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Based on your score last night.
When you have like 3 times the score of the person in second place.
Right.
But like I said in my story about my online game, if I know the opponent's score, then yeah, sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm going to have 3 turns of not scoring any points so I can score big with a combo.
I would think in general, though, the big combos like the wolf and the deers or the fox and the hares, those kinds of things, I think those should have been planned out and executed by the time you're getting into the bonus time at the end of the game. If you're looking to top deck a wolf, you might get lucky, but I don't think it's supposed to be that kind of game.
Yeah. I tell you what, last night's game, I got real frustrated in that I played a card, I forget what kind of card it was, but it allowed me to play an animal for free.
Probably the badger, yeah.
And the foxes are a little expensive, right? As are the wolves. So I put a fox out there and I had one hair, one additional hair in my hand. And I thought, oh, this would be great. I'll go ahead and have lots of hairs. I think I had 5 of them in the last game. And we just didn't see them. People were burying them. People were hiding them behind trees. Like, there just were not a lot of hairs in last night's game that got played. And so that was one of those where I had invested in the fox early, assuming I would see hairs, but it didn't happen.
Well, I was to your right.
And your left.
And so I was actively trying to scoop up hares or making sure they just, because I started the game with a fox and a hare. So I knew I was fishing for as many as I could get.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
I also had 2 hares in my starting hand, but I just figured since it's a 5-player game, they're not going to be worthwhile.
And you were right.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm one of the people who hid them behind my trees by playing the other side. So.
Yes, right.
Well, it was a good strategy for you to follow.
We talked about the cave a little bit, and honestly, I don't think it's that good. It seems very weak, except for very low-scoring games. But I did notice when we were researching for this podcast that the expansion does greatly increase the cave effectiveness by having animals like vultures that give you extra points for your cave cards.
Ah.
And I think that's interesting.
Yeah. One card for me was worth 12 points in the cave, right? I had a bear.
Bear, yeah.
I had been holding on to it just so I could time it when it came around the corner past Megan. If there was a juicy clearing out there that was going to be worth a ton of points, now's the time to play the bear. And that part worked out well.
It seems as it is now in the base game, the use of the cave is highly situational. If you can get the opportunity, jump on it, but you're not going to necessarily build your game around it.
Right.
Yep.
Same with the most often forgotten rule, at least amongst our group.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's the ability to play a card as a sapling. If you need a tree and you don't have a tree.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think that's especially important for what we talked about earlier with the woodpecker or the moss.
Right.
You're just like, oh, you're going to come after me for taking my woodpecker points away? I'm just going to start playing saplings.
And those saplings will count as trees according to the woodpecker.
Absolutely. They also count as trees for the sycamore because they have the tree symbol on them.
Woodpeckers can't peck saplings.
Interesting. Okay. But in and of themselves, they're not worth points and they don't have...
Yeah, it seems like a weak play.
It's a weak play.
I'd much rather play a birch tree, which draws me a card.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that, let's move on to the prompts. Weight and complexity. On Board Game Geek's scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate the weight of Forest Shuffle? And Paul, since you won our game last night, let us know how easy it is.
Yeah, I rated it 2. I think it only took 1 play for my wife to get it.
All right. Dave, what did you have it down as?
It's clearly a 2. I mean, it might start as a 2.5 because here's another big deck of cards I got to learn before I can get proficient at a game. And, that's kind of the way of things these days. But once you get some basic familiarity, there's no surprises under the hood. The iconography is very good. What you're trying to do is very simple. The hand management is one of the more exciting parts of the game, but it's nothing new in hand management. It's kind of things we already know how to do. So, yeah, it's absolutely a 2 in my book.
Yeah, and I agree. I had it down as a 2 as well. I think it's close to another favorite of mine. I think they're similar in weight. There's definitely more to think about than just draw a card and play a card, but there aren't a lot of fiddly rules. At least you realize some cards have exceptions, but they're not too bad, right? Like the hares being able to have more than one on a side of a tree, but that's not a big deal.
It's right on the card.
It's right on the card, yeah. So I had it down as a 2 as well.
Well, and then something like bees or trees, though, and sometimes is right on somebody else's card. So
right. No,
it's just there's the learning curve of getting to know the deck, what the possibilities are.
And being able to identify it from across the table.
Yes.
Right? So that's fair. So then strategy, how much opportunity do you think there is for strategy in the game on the same scale?
I rated a 3. I think there is a good deal of long-term planning early on, but you reach a point where the deck gave you the cards you're going to get, and you just got to make the best of it.
Okay. I also had it down as a 3, mostly because it feels like the game to me, is really about curating your hand while you have the opportunity to do so. And I love that constant anxiety of, can I draw 2 more cards right now? But if I do, that might take me up to 9. And when it comes back around, I'll only be able to pick up 1 card. So maybe I should play something and get down to 7 so that I have the opportunity of taking 2 cards on the next turn if needed. I mean, that whole idea is, one of the things you're juggling while you're planning how you're going to play your combo. So for me, it's also a 3.
Yeah, I'm lockstep with you guys there. It's a strong 3 in strategy. And going, as we've talked about in other games that we really liked, it's trying to do what the game's telling you to do. If you're going to try to force a strategy, it's probably not going to play out for you. So being able to zag when the game tells you to zag and just being, light on your toes as you move forward, but knowing when to do that and, how to make the best of what's presented for you. It's a good 3.
Yeah. It's hard to do that sometimes, right? I get Pitbull locked on this is what I want to do. And I start trying to force the game to do something it doesn't want. So then, Dave, what about luck? How much do you think luck plays a factor on the same scale 1 to 5?
I think luck scales directly with player count. So in a 5-player game, luck is going to be much higher.
Is it a 5?
How about player count -1?
Okay.
So 5-player, I'm going to give luck a 4. 2-player, it's a 1. I'll stand by that.
I think that's a mic drop. I like that answer.
Right? We've done minutes per player count in, time of games, but now we're doing luck per player.
You gave a function as an answer. I'm
right. Player count -1.
Jaw dropped, yeah.
But I'm not wrong, am I?
So 2-player, the biggest butt-clenching moment is when you play a tree mid-game.
Yeah.
Because let's say you need that 3rd salamander. You're thinking to yourself, when I play this tree, is that 3rd salamander going to be the card that flips out? And when it does, your opponent's just going to take it right away.
Yeah.
So that is the primary source of luck in the 2-player game, is the tree addition to the clearing. But overall, I just rated it a 3 because luck is definitely a factor, but I think you can usually outplay it.
Yeah. I originally had it down as a 3 too, but I'm getting on board the player count -1 bus. I really liked that.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So then theme, how much do you think the theme has been integrated with the game on the same scale, 1 to 5? Paul?
For me, it is a 4. I really adore the theme of this game. It is just cute and adorable. The first several times I played it, I thought it was friendly before finding out it's actually quite cutthroat. And the component quality is amazing and fitting for the theme.
All right. And Dave, what do you have for theme?
I'm going to agree here. Theme is really solid here. Foxes eat hares, fungi grow together. There's lots of stuff that inform the mechanics of the game that also fit thematically. I'm thinking it's a 4, but I'm thinking I might bump it up again because this being part of the Lookout Spiel, what do they call it? The Green Line games.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone a step further with the theme by, like we mentioned in the beginning, producing a game without plastics and making a very, low carbon footprint, eco-friendly, biodegradable game. And so that in a nature themed game, I feel like that gives it a little bump. So I'll give it a 4+.
You'll give it
I don't know if I'm ready to go to 5, but why not? I could give it a 5 as well. I mean, the theme is strong. The theme's great. Like Paul was saying, it's adorable, but also there's a lot going on here where it makes it a solid game.
Yeah. I mean, I had it down as a 4 as well. I like the idea of a meta point being added.
4.1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. All right. So favorite player count. What is it best played at? And I feel like we've hinted at it. So let's go ahead and codify the answer. Paul, what do you have down as your favorite player count?
I honestly haven't played 3-player enough, but I think I prefer 2 and 3-player because, as we discussed, it has the least amount of luck.
Okay. And at least in your experience, would you say that 2 players the better option?
Compared to 4 or 5, I prefer 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 100% on that. I wouldn't be mad if this were marketed as a 2-player game. That wouldn't be strange at all if it just was, part of the old Cosmos 2-player line or something like that.
Right. So I have this down at 3 just because, that there aren't as many games that I think play as well at 3.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of games that play well at 2, but 2 player is also excellent. Jill and I have played this a couple of times, but nowhere near what you have played, Paul.
Yeah, like Paul, I don't have a ton of experience at 3 players, but at least in theory, I'm not mad at it. I think 3 players, it seems like that would be very strong. 4 and 5, well, I guess that hints into the next question. 4 and 5, we kind of start to get into a different area here.
All right, well, just keep rolling. So least favorite player count, 4 or 5?
5 with 4 as a close runner-up. It's
Okay.
your destiny. You start to lose control of your own destiny, I think, in some points. The player binding gets very strong. The player next to you, your fate is somewhat in their hands in some ways. And it becomes a much more chaotic game, I think.
Yeah, I think 5 player is the clear winner for least favorite.
Yeah.
I still enjoy 4 player.
Okay. Yeah, I had 5 down as well, but as I was thinking about it, I guess it makes sense. I wonder if Dave and I were going head to head on the linden trees, and Greg and Paul were going on the horse chestnuts, and Megan was just playing it for the first time. So I don't think she really had a strategy that she was pursuing.
Well, she was doing butterflies.
She was.
And
She
bats.
had something else, but nobody else was doing butterflies. So
Or bats.
she was kind of odd man out, which I still think she didn't quite see. And that might have just been luck. She didn't really see as many butterflies, but none of us were really scooping up the butterflies. I just think it didn't fall down for her.
Right. But what I'm looking at is I think maybe at 5, you get that one person who slips through, right? And they're left alone, or their swim lane is left alone, and they're able to get a lot more points for it. Whereas I think in 4, the likelihood that you end up colliding with someone is actually a little more focused, because there are more opportunities to do things like collect hairs, right? At 5, things are distributed enough that it's harder to have a sustaining combo. So actual playing time, boxes can lie, and this one says that the playing time is 40 to 60 minutes. Do you find that to be a good approximation?
I think with experience, it might be closer to 30 to 45. I mean, it's got a pretty good bang to buck ratio on there. It's almost filler territory once everybody's familiar with the game.
Yeah, over half my plays are 2-player, but honestly, I don't think the playtime changes between
Right.
player count. And my average playtime is 41 minutes.
Oh, wow. So what did we clock in last night? Was it 50, 45 minutes?
It was less than 50.
Yeah.
It was 47.
Well, and I'm thinking 5-player is going to be even slower because we're kind of BSing a little bit, and there's a lot more table talk. And it was a teaching game for Megan, so that's always going to, you got a new player at the table. But we still came in under 50.
I've had hour-long 2-player games, but that's because we picked different swim lanes and kept picking up what the other person was putting down, which extended the game quite a bit.
Amazing. Okay. It seems like an actual good estimate, that 40 to 60 minutes for a game of 4 shuffle. Although I agree that if you're both pushing it, it could get down into the 30-minute range. So there is an expansion to this game, but I don't have any experience with it. Do either of you know much about it? Paul, you had mentioned something about caves and vultures.
Yeah, it adds alpine flora and fauna to the game. And the one thing I noticed that intrigues me is it makes the cave more powerful.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so I'm going to have to trust the designers on this one, because this is the same. I mean, we have the same conversation we did about Wingspan, Arc Nova. We talked about this too. We're basically splashing cards in, and so we're diluting it. So if I'm going for Fox and Hares, well, now I've got. In fact, I wrote it down. We're adding 36 cards to the deck. So now I've diluted the deck. There's 36 cards in the deck that aren't going to work for me. We're also removing.
Well, they are adding cards that do work. So the antelope count as deer. They have hares that say they count as European hares. So they are weaving these new cards into the old ones.
Right. And that was going to be my next point, is that I haven't played the expansion, but in its favor, it looks like all of the cards fit in with the existing strategies. There may be some strategies like butterflies might get diluted. I don't know if there's any butterflies in the new one.
Yeah, there's new butterflies as well.
Okay. So if they're augmenting every existing strategy, then I think I trust the designers on this one. And it sounds like it might just be good, clean fun. I don't know.
I expect the only thing it'll really do is extend the playtime.
Well, because there's more cards?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're adding 36 cards and removing 15 to 25 more. So though we're adding cards, we're removing more cards than we would normally remove. Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of balances back to the same. We'll have to play it. I'm kind of pulling it out of the air here, but we'll have to play it and see. But I don't think it's going to extend it dramatically.
Okay. Most recognizable comparison. What is the highest ranking game that reminds you the most of Forest Shuffle? Dave.
Well, thanks for letting me go first. Now, we've already mentioned my answer a couple of times. So I first went into this game in my first 5 plays. I'm thinking this as a San Juan comp or something like that. It was when I think one of you mentioned how the clearing is like Lost Cities, which is my answer for this question. It put this game in a totally different light for me. thinking
Right.
of each tree or each strategy, at least as an expedition that I'm going to prep for before I start playing and try to play it in a certain order or keep it out of the other player's hands. And that illuminated the game for me. And it made me like the game quite a bit more. And I just wasn't seeing that for my first few plays, but it's so obvious now that somebody's mentioned it to me. So this is, like we always used to say, this game X is game Y on steroids. In some ways I might say this is Lost Cities on steroids.
Yeah. So Lost Cities was my answer too, but I did have a backup, and that was San Juan. So congratulations.
Both of them.
You nailed them both.
Yeah.
And if I go with the San Juan comparison, we're back to hand management and multi-use cards, which is just a winning mechanism for me. I absolutely adore it. So I was really happy to see it here. But of course, in San Juan, there is no clearing mechanism there. If you discard a card, you won't see it again until you've run all the way through the deck and reshuffled and brought it back into the draw deck. Paul, what did you have?
My most recognizable comparison is Glory to Rome.
There you go.
Because this game is all about combos. And Glory to Rome has some of the pick up what you put down as well. But if you want to win, you get a good combo.
I mean, you get a game-breaking combo in Glory to Rome.
Well, other players allow you to get that.
True.
Does anybody play Glory to Rome these days? I never hear of it. Everybody loves it when it gets played.
Honestly, I don't like Glory to Rome at all.
Oh, okay.
But I would happily play Innovation.
Yes.
If I did play Glory to Rome, Force Shuffle would have replaced it.
This is a little foreshadowing there, huh? Foreshadowing. Yeah. We can play Glory to Rome. If you want to get to game night early, Dave, I'll bring it and we can get a game in before everyone else shows up.
Well, which edition do you have? Because I know that's part of that game is the different editions.
So I've got the original cartoony version.
Actually, I should have asked which edition don't you have? Just the one?
Right. I just have the one. I have the cartoony edition. I think Greg has the black box edition, which is the one that killed a company, if you are familiar with that particular story. All right, so less recognizable comparison. What did you guys have for the less recognizable one? And Paul, I'll let you go first.
Okay, for me it is Morels, primarily because of the theme, but it's also hand management. 100% and kind of combo building. Well, it's set building really, but it's a forest theme. In Morels, you're walking through a forest and picking up mushrooms so you can cook them later.
And which one does your wife enjoy more, Forest Shuffle or Morels?
It depends how much time we have.
Okay.
Yeah, if we got 30 minutes, it's Morels. More than 30 minutes, it's Forest Shuffle.
Awesome. Dave, what did you have?
Well, it's ridiculous to call this a less recognizable game, but our criterion for this is that it has to be just outside the top 750. So
I reduced it for this.
You didn't even have to, because my answer is Rummy, which is like in the 2000s or 3000s somewhere. Look, you're drawing cards, you're melding cards, you're laying cards off on your tableau that you've melded in front of you. And, if you think of the combos as suits, or trying to put together runs, it's really just a fancy version of that. And it's 100%. Funny, as much as I complain about this game, is that the scarcity of these combos I'm trying to pull off, where I'll sit and, try to pull an inside straight on a, run I'm going for in Rummy, which is a 1 in 52 chance. It's, even worse than this, but I somehow accept it better in, a game of 500 rum or contract Rummy with my family than in a game like this. But it's very similar. It's, Rummy with whistles and bells.
I really like that comparison. And you're right. So the reason why I said I dropped it is currently at number 723 is a game that won the Kennerspiel des Jahres in 2023, I think, 2022. And that is Living Forest. This is you trying to collect different elements to play guardian spirits in front of you, and then they're each contributing their various either powers or their elements so that you can combo and then play additional spirits into your forest and accomplish those tasks using their attributes. And it's a great little game in the forest theme. It has some definite cartoonish artwork, and it definitely was a ready comparison for me, but just under the 750 mark.
Well, now I see why you lowered that mark from 750 to 700, where you're just unashamedly saying because your game was at 723.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You get to do that when you're the host.
That's right.
So house rules, how would you improve the game? Any thoughts there?
I don't have any yet. I really racked my brain. I can't think of any.
Yeah, I wish I could play a cricket sound effect.
Yeah. would be very apt. Yeah.
For me, I would love to try playing it with a known ending or at least a less variable ending.
Oh, so you want to take out the funnest part of the game?
It's not the funnest part of the game for me. I thought about, if you shuffled it into the last 10 or 15 cards, but really all you're saying is you need one winter card. When you see the winter card, the game is going to end and it's going to happen sometime in the last fill in the number of cards versus
Right.
It could happen anytime after you've uncovered 2, like we did a couple weeks ago when we got 2 off the bat. And so we had 30 cards of drawing that still...
So you're saying that the fact the game could end, let's say, 1% chance with a third of the deck undrawn is what puts ants in your pants.
What I don't like about the game. Yep. Literal ants in my pants. Thank you. Yes. Red ants and they're biting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if this game is being played at game night, what do you want to play afterwards? What's the double feature game that goes best along with it?
Nothing. I want to play a game before this one.
Yes? Okay.
Okay.
I also have that down as my answer, but what is that game?
I would continue the theme and play Arc Nova.
Right?
Instead of playing trees, you're playing zoo enclosures, but they call out to me to be together.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I had Earth down for the same reason, right? You're building up an ecology, but it's another game in that style as Arc Nova or Terraforming Mars.
Well, interestingly, no wonder we are a game group because my answer is Terraforming Mars. So we've said 3 versions of very similar games. For me, we've terraformed the planet. Let's get a forest going. Let's get some flora and fauna.
Oh yeah,
there.
I mean,
to me, it's terraforming Mars Part 2.
A huge forest on Mars when you terraform it. So yeah, makes sense.
That's right.
Right? So if I had to think of maybe one other game lighter than this, how about Arboretum?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what my wife and I play when we only have 15 minutes.
So you have these 3 games stacked on top of each other.
Exactly.
And which one comes off the shelf is how much time you have.
And if they have 90 minutes, it's Arc Nova.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
All right, so what feature of the game still stands out to you? So this game, is still a relative new one. What really has aged the best in its limited release time? Dave?
It's the clearing. And as we said, it's a rehash of Lost Cities. But to me, that's just the most interesting part of the game is that I can't give you cards that you're going to want or time them to wipe them as we've talked about. Just the way that discard interacts, I think it's fantastic. And I think it's going to hold up for a while.
Absolutely. Good call. Paul, what did you have?
I couldn't decide between 2 things that I love about this game. One being the clearing, like Dave said, and 2 being the variable game end, like you said.
Yeah.
I didn't say that was my favorite thing, though.
You said you wanted to house rule it, but it's one of my favorite things.
Okay. All right. For me, I had the split cards, right? The left, right, top, bottom.
Those are awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a novel, but the clearing is also just a really strong mechanism that stands out, so I agree there. So what feature of the game now disappoints game length? What has aged the worst for you? Anything?
My answer is nothing.
Nothing. Game length. Okay.
Well, this isn't a big knock on the game. I mean, it shouldn't be, and this is not a big deck energy game that we've talked about, but it is another game we come into yet another game where I've got to learn a whole new deck of cards, and it's in the zeitgeist right now. Like that's what's hot right now. Or these aren't unique cards, so it's not quite the same as Arc Nova. But again, in order to get proficient, I've got to learn a whole bunch of cards. But you can't knock the game for it. That's really what makes it sing. I mean, that's what's good about the game. It's just as a player, like, here we go again. So I actually grumbled through a few plays before my gaming friends start telling me, like, no, it's a good game. Trust us. And then I start, all right, I'll learn the cards and make it to the other side.
Right. And appreciate the clearing for what it is. As you mentioned, that was your other aha moment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. And by the way, I didn't mean game length. I meant the game timer mechanism.
Oh, we all knew. You were talking about the winter cards.
Yeah.
I have it as one of my favorite features, and you have it as one of the worst features. Understood.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you didn't like it so much. It's such a great tension at the end of the game. Do you like it in Alhambra or other games that do this? Like, this could be my last turn. I don't know yet.
I don't.
You just don't like that ever.
I love player-controlled endings to the game, but I also like knowing where that ending is so I can control to it, right?
Yeah.
St. Petersburg. I can
Todd wants it to be a dartboard instead of the broadside of a barn. In Forest Shuffle, it's the broadside of a barn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or maybe this is the illusion of player controlled. Like we're trying to
Also
influence it. The deck is controlling the end of the game. We're just
Right.
trying to speed or slow down that deck. So it's not as player controlled as we want it to be.
Right.
But you want it to be. I like it the way it is.
No, you like the way it is. And look,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it when we get to rating.
Yeah, I think the reason I love the variable game end so much is because I became so soured on a previous favorite game of mine called Locomotive Works because of the minute calculations that everybody had to do at the end of the game. You had to work backwards like a math problem to 3 turns before the end of the game to figure out what position you wanted to be at the end of the game. And so that developed a hatred of defined game endings for me.
Okay.
It was such a good time we had with Locomotive Works. And then that end game meta started to emerge. And then it's starting to get to where sometimes even less than halfway through the game where we start calculating, where do I want to be? I'm planning for the end game from here.
Right.
And there's a lot of basic arithmetic involved, but a lot of it.
To get the notepad and the calculator, yeah.
No, I bought a pack of 10 mini calculators off Amazon, and I just threw them in the box. So everybody gets their player color, whatever it is, and a calculator. It's such a great game that's also that
ruined by the ending. Yeah.
Totally destroys it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you don't see it yet, it's a great ride until you see that ending.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So did this game replace a previous game for you? And I'll go ahead and answer first. And I suspect I'm actually going to possibly, but I'm not going to say Locomotive Works. I might be getting in Paul's way here. For me, it replaced Fox in the Forest, but not Fox in the Forest Duet, since that one is a cooperative game. But I really can't imagine wanting to play Fox in the Forest instead, given the same amount of time for each game. What did you have, Paul?
Well, I still have and adore Fox in the Forest Duet. I've never played Fox in the Forest.
Okay.
So for me, there is no specific game that Forest Shuffle has replaced. It has just stolen time from all the games I used to play to make a space for itself.
Okay. That's a great answer.
Well, often for this, we say, no, it hasn't replaced a game because it's a new space or a new kind of game.
Right.
In this case, it hasn't replaced a game because all of the predecessors that we've mentioned, I would rather play over this game. So I would rather play Race for the Galaxy.
That's the next question, Dave.
Yeah, right.
Is it? Well, no, it hasn't been replaced. Those games came before it, but I would rather play Lost Cities. I'd rather play San Juan, and I'd rather play Race for the Galaxy before we play this. Though this is great. I'm not knocking the game that much. It's just the shoulders that it stands on are better than it.
Right. I would have to change the composition of the next question to be more like, what are the games that this did not displace?
Right. That it tried. It tried to stand on its corner, but it didn't take it.
That's actually probably a better question to ask, because I think it's new enough that if I were to ask, has this been replaced by anything? The answer is no.
Right. And Dave's answer is Rummy.
Dave's answer is 3-card Monty. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Soundtrack. What music would you want to listen to while playing?
Ambient sounds of the forest.
Okay.
Yeah. Since this theme has come up a few times, I think we probably have the exact same answers as whatever last game we had that was nature themed. And for me, it's just nature sounds or spa music.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. That will work. I forced myself to find a different answer, and I didn't go with, Vivaldi. I went this time with Mysterious Forest by Frédéric Chopin.
Oh.
All right. Is that Chopin making another appearance on our podcast, or is that his first? I don't remember.
I don't know. I think it might be the first appearance.
Yeah.
Unless we do Lacrimosa or something like that. We may not maybe a while before he gets another opportunity.
All right.
So rating on Board Game Geek scale of 1 to 10 now. How would you rate Forest Shuffle? And Dave, I'm going to have you go last. So Paul?
For me, it's an 8.
It's an 8. All right. Which is a good score coming from you. But why an 8?
Why an 8? Because I would recommend it and never say no to someone else asking to play it.
Okay. I had it down as a 7. And I think it could still be climbing. The thing about not liking the end game score, it doesn't kill the game for me by any stretch of the imagination. So one of the things about finding something that hasn't aged well or you don't like about the game could could be improved upon, you're going to pick something. But this is still a really good game, and 7 is a healthy score, and we're still playing it, and I'm looking forward to playing it some more. So Dave, what did you have it down as, since you've had the largest journey with the game on that front?
Yeah. Well, right now it's at a 6 for me. It's a good game. I'll play if somebody else wants to play. Generally, there's probably another game that I want to play. I think it's a good game that my plays of the game have not really been able to access as well. And probably because I haven't played as much 2-player. I think if I spent some time really exploring the 2-player game, that would probably rise. Most of my plays have been on BGA 4-player, in person 4 and 5-player. So I'm probably doing the game a bit of a disservice that maybe those player counts shouldn't even be on the box like we were saying, but it's a 6 for me. Like I said, all the games that came before it, they kind of influenced this game. I would rather play those games.
So just out of curiosity, what do you rate Rummy?
Rummy? That's an interesting question because I haven't actually sat down to rate it. So Rummy's a different kind of experience, right? I mean, it's not a game that I'm necessarily playing for the mechanics of the game. It's sitting around and having snacks and visiting, usually with family members maybe you haven't seen for a while. It always has a different environment. I do quite like Gin Rummy. That might actually be, of the Rummies, I might say Gin Rummy's a 7 for me. It's just a classic, solid game.
Mm-hmm. And what would you rate the standard 52 card deck plus 2 jokers?
I mean, that might be a
question?
10. No, that's a great question. That might be a 10, honestly. I
think it is.
That and a Book of Hoyle, I'm ready to go.
Right?
Yeah.
So back to Forest Shuffle. Is it replayable, and how soon would you want to revisit the game? And Paul, I'm going to let you go last this time. So Dave, I'll let you go first.
Look, I say this a lot, too much, probably on every episode. But it's a game where if you're going to play it, replay it, or don't bother. Don't play this once or twice because, again, it has that learning curve for the deck. It's really not going to start to illuminate or, bloom as a game until you're familiar with the possibilities that are out there. So if you're not going to play it 5 to 10 times, don't play it once. So yes, it's replayable if it's playable.
Yeah. And I'm looking at my notes for this, and I have something similar in that, it's absolutely replayable, especially with the muscle memory about the power combinations and what's possible. And I think you could get the playing time down to 30 minutes, which would be amazing. I mean, this game in a 2-player 30-minute game would be an incredible experience. All right, Paul, bring us home.
Yeah, so I've been playing every week or two, and to Dave's point, it took my wife 8 plays before she was able to beat me.
Wasn't she surprised when you told her the exact number?
Yeah, she didn't realize she had played that many times.
Some games just take it. It's that 6th play or that 7th play where the light comes on and I've had this more than you guys, I think, where I've grumbled about a game and because I trust you guys so much, I'll keep grumbling, but I'll keep trying. And then the light comes on one day, and Russian Railroads was one. And I didn't enjoy it. And maybe the 4th or 5th play, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a great game. And I don't know what it is.
And all of a sudden you're better than us. Yep.
I don't know. Now I'm certainly not. Maybe I won the last one we played, but that's probably it. But yeah.
Well, all I can say is I hope the light turns on for you because it doesn't always turn on.
Yeah. Food chain magnate.
Yunnan. Yeah.
Oh, Yunnan for you. You know what? You gave it a fair shake. I mean, you've got a lot of plays, and if it hasn't taken by now, I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it is either. All right. And with that, the 3rd winner card has been drawn. For our next episode, I think we're going to have the same crew, and we're going to go digging for ancient civilizations and their artifacts. So thanks for being available tonight, guys. And goodness, can we get to sleep at a reasonable hour?
Springtime will come.
All right. Thanks. That's a good one.
Thank you for listening to Replayable. Support for our podcast comes from listeners like you. You can find us online at replayable.fm, on Twitter as ReplayableFM, and on Instagram as ReplayableFM. You can also join our team at patreon.com/replayable. Thank you for your support. We welcome your feedback, which is the only way that we are going to get better. You can get in touch with us via email at feedback@replayable.fm. And if you're interested in sponsoring us, then please contact us at sponsors@replayable.fm.